Dogs? I hadn't thought about that. What's another?
Animal
Do you remember?
Drug finding dogs.
Drug finding dogs? Okay, there's dogs who do sheep herding. They herd animals for us, right? But a lot of those jobs that we just mentioned, the drug finding dogs and the bomb finding dogs and the finding people dogs. Oh, has anybody ever flown to another country and come back and seen the beagles? The beagle brigade that climbs all over your suitcases to see if you brought in any plant material? Have you ever seen them? That's a very important job.
I've never gone to another country before.
Well, you're pretty young to have done that, but that's pretty exciting. Yes.
My mom and dad have been on a boat to Alaska.
Well, they might do it on the boat, on the ports also, but the beagles have the second best nose to bloodhounds, and they climb all over the suitcases and they make sure that nobody's brought in any plant material, because then that could introduce a disease into this country that we don't have any solution for. So all of those jobs, the finding people and the finding drugs and the finding bombs and the finding plants, all of those jobs rely on the dog's sense of smell. Basically, I'll get to you. So every breed of dog has a better sense of smell than any breed of human, than any human being. And of all the different breeds of dogs, bloodhounds have the best sense of smell. So we remembered all of our props today. It only took 3 times. So human brain is this size. This is a model of a human brain. And
Not very big.
so,
Clothes around in there, so.
right, it's smaller than you might think. It's certainly smaller than I thought. But in any case,
Oh, yeah,
when you walk into a kitchen and you smell pizza in the oven, there's a part there's a part of our brain that allowed us to pull in the smells into our nose and immediately identify what that is, and that's called scent processing. So the part of our brain that performs that scent processing function for us is the size of a single green pea. And that's pretty small, huh? And
Not very big, is it?
Think
About
of
the
all
size
the-
of my fingertip.
And think of all the smells you can recognize. You can recognize all sorts of different kinds of food, and you can recognize people. You know, if your mother or your grandmother wears a particular perfume all the time, and she's been in the room, and you walk in, you can recognize that, and you're not thinking about it. It just immediately comes to you. Now, a bloodhound's brain is about the size of my fist, so it's much smaller. And the part of a bloodhound's brain that does scent processing is the size of a golf ball. So it's 1/3 to 1/2 of the bloodhound's brain is dedicated to doing all of that scent processing and that scent identification. So, you know, the rest of his brain pretty much is only lets him breathe and eat and you know, walk.
And bark.
Right, well, they don't do too much barking. They don't bark when they
Sleep.
work. So,
Did you have dinner?
what's your question, Julie?
Doesn't some dogs do, like, find people's cell phones?
That's true. They're called article search
Article
dogs.
search.
Good point. And that's also using their nose. So there's another physiological difference between that makes dogs, bloodhounds particularly, be good at this kind of work. So we have in our nose. Do you know about cells, that your bodies are made up of cells?
Yes.
Okay, so in our nose we have cells that do scent recepting. They are the cells that allow that get the scents into our brain. And if you added the surface area of all of our scent receptor cells together, it would be the size of a single postage stamp. Which you're just like a little too fast here. If you add the surface area of the bloodhound scent receptor cells together, it's this big. It's the size of a bandana. So they have that big long nose, and that nose is lined with scent receptor cells, and so literally they were built to do this job. They were built to use their nose to smell things.
Where did they come from?
They were bred, they've been bred for 1,000 years. For 1,000 years, people have created bloodhounds specifically for their sense of smell. And 1,000 years ago, there were some monks in Belgium. You know where Belgium is?
Yes.
Northern Europe?
Yeah.
There were monks that bred these dogs, that started breeding these dogs that were good at smelling things, and they used them for hunting, and they used them at big manors to find people who had been hunting who weren't supposed to be hunting. And the name bloodhound came because back then, 1,000 years ago, people didn't keep track of the dogs that they had bred together. They didn't write it all down. And so they started writing down the bloodlines. So they bred Bessie with George, and they wrote that down. And so the bloodhounds were known as the blooded hounds because their bloodlines and their family tree were documented. So that's where the name came from. Yes, Amelia.
Do they ever fail?
Well, yes. They are dogs, and they get distracted, and we are people, because the thing about handling a bloodhound is they can't talk, right? They can't say, oh, he went that way. They can only do what they're going to do, and it's up to the handler to learn how to read their body language and understand what they're telling us. And sometimes we don't understand correctly, and sometimes they might get distracted. And I'll get to you, Raina. But the biggest thing that causes problems, well, okay, so what's your question, Raina?
Why do the dogs get so big?
That's just the size they are. They have to be pretty strong and rugged, because think about going through the woods. Going through the woods, you've got trees, fallen trees that you have to climb over, and you've got, ravines that you have to go up and down, and you've got rocks that you have to go over. So they have to be big, sturdy dogs. But the biggest thing that makes them fail, or that makes us as a team fail, is the scent articles. That if you don't know exactly who's touched the object that you sent the dog off of, it may be that somebody else has touched it and the dog followed that other person. Because the dog isn't going to lie to us. Dogs don't lie. But if we don't know, say Jared's gone missing, and we go to his house and we say, tell his mother, we need a scent article. We need something that Jared's worn. And if we don't go with the person that's finding that scent article, well, maybe she's going to pull it out of the family hamper. And if she pulls one of Jared's t-shirts out of the family hamper, it's going to smell like Jared and everybody else that's in that household. And if we don't know the history of that scent article, and we give the dog that scent article, and the dog goes right to Jared's dad, or Jared's mom, or Jared's sister or something, the dog's not lying, but we didn't know enough. We didn't know enough to communicate to him well to make sure that we gave him exactly the scent we wanted him to follow.
So, she talked about scent. Do you know that your body loses 40 to 50,000 cells every minute? They fall off your skin when you breathe. And so anybody know who this is?
Charlie.
Who is it?
Big Ben.
Pigpen. You know, to the bloodhound, that's what we look like. Because when you walk around, you've got this cloud of skin cells and cells from your body all around you. That's what the dogs are actually tracking. They don't know exactly what scent is, but they know that it's unique. Your scent, and don't confuse scent with smell, just because I didn't take a shower, I smell, but that's not my scent. So your scent is unique, just like your DNA. So that's how the dogs can tell Jared from Shannon from Miss Erin, because everybody has a unique scent. One other little thing, anybody know who Walt Disney is?
Yes, I do.
Who was Walt Disney?
He invented Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, and then everybody else came later.
That's right. He actually had the studio, Walt Disney. And so who's this? Somebody said. Pluto. You know
Well,
that
you
Walt
guys are
Disney.
good. A lot of kids don't know who Pluto
Yeah.
is. That was good.
Yeah.
Right.
Walt Disney actually had a bloodhound that he took to work every day, and the dog slept or was in his office by his desk. So he either had, or one of his illustrators decided they were going to make a character, and it was Pluto. Okay? Oh, let's see. Oh, jumping dog. Yeah, they love to swim.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So people think if you go through water or something that the dog won't be able to find you. One of these pictures, right here,
The picture down there that has a dog tree.
yeah, they were swimming. In fact, they just went swimming last weekend. So the dogs can follow you even though you walk through the water. It might take us a little longer, but you can't hide. With a good dog and a good handler, they'll find you. It just takes time. Okay? So we'll leave this up here. And afterwards, everybody can come take a look at it, and if you have any questions, we'll answer them.
And then just before we show the movie, because this is a course on pets and vets, I thought I'd talk just a little bit about these dogs and how we train with them and how we take care of them. So you can see this picture down here. That's Millie, and she was 12 weeks old, and we put them in their harness for the first time when they're 12 weeks. And when you train a dog to do a job for you, any job, it has to be fun. It has to be a game for the dog. It has to be fun. There has to be rewards and excitements, and so we start with little runaways, and we get really excited and squealy, and that's kind of hard for guys who are handling. They have to reach way down and find their feminine side so they can be squealing and excited, because if they use their regular man voice, that's threatening to an animal. Yes?
My older cousin, he's like 34, and he is a search and recovery person, and he has this bloodhound named Murray, and
Well, let me finish talking about training them, and then you can tell me about that when we're done, okay?
and he couldn't train him because he didn't know that he couldn't use his
Man voice?
normal man
Yeah.
voice.
Well, training bloodhounds, this is where we met Miss Erin. It's not something that you can read a book and learn how to do. You really have to find somebody who's done it before to pass on that tradition to you. So Miss Erin and we know the same people in Pennsylvania who have been handling bloodhounds to do search and rescue for 22 years. And so they were gracious enough to help us. We arrived at their doorstep just really frustrated because we were trying to train bloodhounds the way you would train a German Shepherd, and it just doesn't work. So we start with them when they're 12 weeks old, and we put them in the harness, and we start playing the game, and the game just gets, it always has to be fun. There always has to be a very special treat at the end. And for our dogs, that very special treat at the end is chicken livers.
Ew.
Ew, yeah, well, they think they're like the best thing ever. And they think this game is the best game ever. If we don't train them for a week of a whole, it's hide and seek for them. It's, you hide and they seek. So if we go for a whole week and we don't train, they get really antsy and they start doing naughty things like you might do if you've been stuck in the house for a week of rain. So let me finish talking about how we train. So we do that, and because we don't know when we're going to be called, we could be called in the middle of the night, we could be called in the middle of the night 5 nights in a row, and it's a very hard job. It's physically demanding for these dogs. It's physically and mentally demanding. The experts say that it takes 6 times the energy for these dogs to work from one point to another as it does to simply walk that distance. So that's like whenever they're working, they're sprinting full force. And we've gone a couple of miles on a trail. So it's really important to keep these dogs at their proper weight, because if they're overweight, then they just have to spend extra energy hauling that extra weight around with them. And if they're underweight, then they're not strong enough, they're not as strong as they need to be to do this job. And we have to keep their ears clean, and we have to keep their toenails, all the normal things you have to do for dogs. But it's really important because they're working dogs that they be in good physical condition. So, oh, and here's a book. This is written by, oh no, this isn't.
Yeah, that's.
This is written by a woman that we've trained with. Well, it's about, but it's Boone. It's called One Incredible Dog, Boone, and it's actually a compilation of true stories that lots of different bloodhounds, of different bloodhounds finding people who were lost. So, Alan Patty, I think, may have a story in here, I'm not sure. Yeah. So, we have to do library later today, so we have to brought that with us. Yeah. Alright, so this is a video on, it's a true story. It happened to a little girl in a park just north of Baltimore, Gunpowder State Park. It's a true story. So it's on, and we'll talk, I'll ask you questions and we'll talk about what happened after the story. But it tells you how not to get lost if you go on a hike in the woods, and what to do to stay safe if you do happen to get lost, okay?